Great. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us on Zoom and people that are watching on Facebook Live and other members who maybe just called in. This is the meeting of the Town Center Update team, and hopefully at some point in the future we'll be able to gather again in person, but for now I think we've done a great job of making this work. Thank you very much to the members of the department for facilitating our utilization of technology, and for all the people on the team who have joined us again this evening. So we've got a pretty ambitious agenda with some new items to be discussed. So without any further ado, I'll say welcome, and we'll go from there. It looks like the first item on the agenda would be the approval of the minutes from the meeting on June 9th. Does anybody have any corrections, additions, or questions regarding that? If that's the case, it looks like everyone, nothing to be added. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting? Deborah made the motion and Lindsay seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Now I'll go back and follow the directions like I'm supposed to. And Terry, would you please call roll for this evening?
I would be happy to.
Thank you.
So if everybody could quickly unmute so we can get through this as fast as possible, because I actually have to hear you say it to be like legit. So Member Curtis. Unmute, please. Oh, he didn't. He might have froze up. A lot of screens are frozen. I'll go through them and come back if I don't hear you. Member Roten.
Here.
Member Lutz.
Here.
Member Edwards. Member Brewer. Member Weiss.
Here.
Member Risdale.
Here.
Member Marion.
Here.
Member Broyles. Member Hood.
Here.
Chair Loyal.
Here.
Member Sedlak. Member Cohen. Member Helfrey. Member Lee.
Here.
Member Hoffman.
Here.
Council Liaison McCutcheon.
Here.
And Council Liaison Jelani. Okay, and back to Member Curtis.
Here, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much. We have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is public comments and input. Do we have any? I know we have some members of the public that are joining us either via Facebook or on Zoom. Do we have any public comment cards or indication that someone would like to speak?
So I'll let Terry answer if we received anything prior to the meeting that I'm not aware of. But while she's checking that, I would ask that the two people who are attending, if they would like to speak, to either raise their hand or let us know in the chat feature. So we can give them just a minute. I'll let you know.
And there was no submittals that I received other than what was included in the packet.
Okay, and neither is indicating, and Tony said they're just listening in. So I think we're good to go to the next item. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I'll turn it over now to Mr. Yudich to discuss the items that are in our packet for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to all of the team members, thank you again for attending tonight. It is very much appreciated by the Department of Planning and our residents who are interested in our town center plan. As has been the practice since we started this process, the department has provided you information in support of tonight's agenda. That information includes a number of items. I'm going to focus on those that are relative to action items on the agenda. You have several 11-inch by 17-inch sheets. The first of those is the permitted land use table that shows both what exists now and what the team has suggested. It's more the complicated table that we went through for several meetings over the course of several months. Along with that, Terry had created a simplified table at the request of the team, and that one is also included tonight. And if done correctly, the first table with the new items reflects the simplified table with the new items. New tonight is the table that prepared along with Kathy that reflects the summary of all of the neighborhood design standards by regulating plan, land use designation. And as you know from our last meeting, Ms. Helfrey, one of the team members, wanted to kind of simplify all the words into a table form. And to Terry and Kathy, thanks for accomplishing that. I hope you found that informative and, more importantly, what you wanted in terms of a representation. Also in the packet are the ARB, the Architectural Review Board's guidelines for town center. And that will be a major component of tonight's discussion. Also, the street matrix. We had completed that approximately a year ago. Two of the projects that were identified as priorities have been completed. So there is a desire on the team members' part to go back and kind of reprioritize and reflect those changes. Also, standard items are regulating plan, representation, the map, and then our timeline, things that we've accomplished since our inception till tonight. And then finally, the actions you have taken as a team, and those are reflected by the votes and the activities associated with them. So hopefully we've given you a complete packet and it's helpful for tonight's meeting. If there are any questions, Kathy, Terry, Travis, or I will be glad to address them. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. If there's no questions, we'll move on to the next item, which is finalized town center plans, neighborhood design standards, which is our fourth major component. Joe, would you mind updating us on where we're at as far as finalizing?
Certainly, sir. I just wanted to make a couple of comments relative to the permitted uses and the neighborhood design standards, because as you know, the neighborhood design standards contain some references to use types. And so there was a little bit of overlap. At our last meeting in May, there was a discussion relating to the neighborhood edge district and having a grocery store or a prepared food store as a conditional use in that residential district, but not to exceed a 3,000 square foot size. There was a vote taken by the team and we've now addressed that. So the table, the permitted land use activities table now reflects that discussion and the action of the team. Also, we discussed at the last meeting that there was kind of a repetitive category of land use. It talked about stores and shops for retail purposes, stores and shops, open air markets for retail purposes. So what ended up coming out of that discussion of the team is we basically combined it into one for simplification. So now it reads retail, stores and shops for retail, excuse me, I just went blank, stores and shops and open air markets for retail purposes. So hopefully those two items reflect what you had requested as a team. And now the table of land use activities should be complete. From there, we went on to the neighborhood design standards and we went through each of the districts. And now I'm going to be referencing the table that Terry put together. And that's on the back side of the simplified permitted land use activities chart. And as you can see, we went through a number of items. We tried to simplify, and I think the team was successful in such. So the first section talks about building types. And as you can see, there's a list of uses and then identification per land use classification, the lot criteria. And I want to emphasize that SSO reflects the site-specific ordinance. The chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, Mr. Lee, had talked at length at the last meeting about the PRD, the Planned Residential Development Overlay District, and how it would be applied in many of these instances for residential projects. And so the SSO is a reflection of that discussion. So we put the minimums and maximums for lot criteria along with the block perimeter information. Building standards, we've identified those, the minimum frontages, setbacks, and we had a lengthy discussion about the side yard setbacks. At the end, we stayed relatively the same. Facade standards, how the porch addresses the sidewalk grade, vertical bays, ground floor heights, etc. Those are all identified in that next section. And then finally, site standards. And the site standards were added in the update that occurred in 2010 relative to pedestrian-friendly design, public open space, environmental preservation, parking, et cetera, et cetera. So if Terry, Kathy, Mr. Newberry, and I have done our jobs well, we now have a table that reflects your actions as we went through the neighborhood design standards over the last several months. Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you to everyone in the department. It's a wonderful tool and much easier to read.
Thank you. And again, it was Kathy and Terry that worked on it, and I do appreciate it as well. We're open for any questions or comments if you see something we've missed or if you'd like to have further explanation. Thank you. Kathy, we can go from share screen back to the view.
Okay, if there's no further discussion. Oh, I'm sorry, Michael.
Yeah, so the intent here is to put these tables in our town center regulating booklet that we were going to put together, right?
Definitely. It was a great suggestion. It's probably one we should have had in place for a long period of time.
Do we need to vote on that to get this in the booklet, or what's the action?
Yes, the department would respectfully request that we vote on the table as a reflection of our discussion of the neighborhood design standards and approval of them as provided tonight.
Michael, you make a motion?
So I'll make a motion that we approve the exhibits that the department put together for this action.
And I second that motion.
Jeannie, second. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, I have a comment, and please, everybody, don't hit me. I'm glad we're not in person. But as an elected representative, I've got to ask one more time. Is there any way that we can do anything to decrease density for the houses in town center? I went out and measured in Evergreen, where I live, in Evergreen neighborhood. The houses are 16 feet to 17 feet between houses. I went up to Villages of Brightleaf, and when there are two air conditioners on the same side, you can barely walk through there. And I know that's 5 feet apart. When you actually measure 5 feet, it really is not that great of a distance. So if there's anything we can do to decrease density, can somebody please suggest that? Joe, Kathy?
If I may, with the chair's permission.
Please.
If you look at the table that's been provided, if you look at the side yard setback area, so it's the third yellow bar down on the table, side yard minimum. It speaks to in the downtown workplace, neighborhood general, and neighborhood edge 5 feet, but it also says side yard setback total. So the only one that has 5 and 5 now is the downtown district, which is entirely commercial. And that kind of makes a little more sense in a commercial setting. All of the others now have a minimum of 15 between the two side yard areas. So inevitably, if you did just simple math, 7.5 and 7.5 feet would be an equal a split of the 15-foot distance. It could be 5 or 10. So I think, Ms. McCutcheon, you all addressed it by that second line of the side yard setback, which says total.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? I would just make one, assuming that this will be approved, that if going through the process, because there's a lot of data and information on these charts, if you guys recognize what is simply a typographical error and you're supporting the intent of our actions, I would like to empower the department to make that change without having to bring it back to us for some reason, some legislative reason. I know that's happened previously on some documents, and I think that we have a good understanding what the intent is of our changes. And if you just find a typographical error, I'd like to empower the department to make the change. So that having been said, do you want to do a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Member Curtis,
Aye.
Member Roten,
Aye.
Member Lutz, I'm sorry, Member Lutz. Okay, I'll come back to Member Lutz. Member Weiss,
Yes.
Member Risdale,
Aye.
Member Marion,
Aye.
Member Hood,
Aye.
Chair Loyal,
Aye.
Member Lee,
Yes.
Member Hoffman,
Yes. Yes.
Liaison McCutcheon.
Yes.
Okay, and back to Member Lutz. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
That was a yes.
Oh,
And-
thank you.
Sure.
Terry, Team Member Broyles is on the call as well.
I'm on now. I apologize for my tardiness.
My
Welcome.
apologies, I didn't. Elizabeth Broyles, Member Broyles, how do you
Yes.
vote? Thank you. Vote passes, thank
The
you.
motion
Chair.
passes. So thank you very much. We'll incorporate this in our final document for presentation. Well done. Scraping off number 4, we move on to number 5. Congratulations on making progress, team. Architectural guidelines. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the team, the architectural guidelines, as has been noted by the chair, is our 5th and final major component of the town center plan. The architectural guidelines, in this case, are only applied within the town center boundary, and they are administered by the city's Architectural Review Board. If you're not familiar, the Architectural Review Board is 5 practicing licensed architects that oversee submittals from the smallest house to the largest commercial building. So there is not a new structure or building per se that has been constructed in town center over the last 20 plus years that has not been through review by the Architectural Review Board. Mr. Hoffman is the liaison from the Architectural Review Board to this team and will be asked to provide some background and information tonight. I do want to note that beginning at the very end of 2015 and through the majority of 2016, the Architectural Review Board did go through these guidelines thoroughly. The process they followed is each member was assigned a different section. That member would do an in-depth review and then present their recommended changes to the board for consideration and action. The process took over a year to complete. And so tonight you are seeing an updated version of the guidelines that the review board did consider. Acknowledging that, as always, the team has the authority to modify, change, delete. But again, I would recommend that any suggested changes be first considered by the team, responded to by Mr. Hoffman, and then we can go from there. The guidelines were part of the original town center plan that Andres Dewani presented to the community. There were quite a few more of them, And some of them over the years we recognized would work well in Florida, but not necessarily mid-Missouri and the St. Louis area. So over the course of that update, the Architectural Review Board has kind of made it a little bit more Wildwood orientated and less, let's say, nationally orientated. And as you can see, there are a statement of intent. That's new. That was added by the ARB as part of their review. There is the miscellaneous regular guidelines for site design, facade compositions. There's the elements, which include openings, walls, and roofs. And then finally, building types. And again, this was something that the Architectural Review Board felt very strongly about to help kind of provide the vision for those building types to the development community as they came in to consider projects. And then finally, definitions. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to defer to Mr. Hoffman, our expert, to kind of carry the ball on home.
Thank you, Terry. Would you like to continue?
Thank you, Joseph. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize for no video. I could not get that link to work on my phone, and my webcam has not come in yet. So as Joe was saying, it's been like 20 years that this thing has been evolving. One of the problems when Wildwood first formed was we had no fabric of a community. We couldn't say, like Webster Grove says, you know, well, you got to blend with the existing. There was no existing. So one of the things that Duane had done, come up with a very detailed set of restrictions and design guidelines to be met. But he had been doing projects like Celebration Florida and things like that really don't really apply here. Some of the standards and the guidelines when we were reviewing some of the initial projects, it was like, well, that just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for this project. So one of the things that we've got in the guidelines is at any time, based on architectural significance, we can throw them all out. So we've always got that, and that is somewhere in there. Isn't it, Joseph? Do you remember that?
Yes, sir. It's called architectural merit.
That's it. That's it. Architectural merit. So things like the B&B theater that really didn't comply with the standards. Their original design sort of made it look like the buildings across the street with only a fake storefront. And we said, no, you can't do that. So I think John Gunther was the one that suggested, he says, well, you know, if you'd want to make it Art Deco, the guy says, if I go back to my boss and tell him that, he's going to come and kiss you on the mouth, because he's always wanted to do an Art Deco theater. So things like that, we were able to, you know, relax the guidelines. They said over the last 20 years, I don't know, at least probably 20 architects have reviewed this, commented on it, and pretty much edited it down to what it is now. So please don't change it. Unless you've got an architectural merit.
Thank you, Terry. Anything else you'd like to add? Lindsay, by all means.
I did have one question for Terry. Terry, as an engineer, I'm looking at the site lighting component, and I was wondering if there was any discussion when this was in development of light trespass across property boundary lines and also uplighting in parking lots.
Well, lighting is actually based on the lighting code. I believe Randy Burkett reviews all lighting fixtures, make sure that the cutoff and the intensity and all of that meets the standards, which is not part of this.
Okay. Yeah, I do a lot of LEED project, and they have, you know, site lighting trespass and uplighting and that type of thing to maintain the darkness of the surrounding area. So I was wondering if that was involved in this process.
Right.
So.
Yeah, we don't review the lighting. We look at the fixtures. If it's an architectural or an ornamental fixture, we'll look at that to see if it basically blends with the architecture, or whether, you know, is it up too high, is it too low, whatever. But other than that, then Randy goes through it and reviews it for intensity and cutoff and privacy and stuff like that.
Okay.
Michael.
So clarify, Terry, this would just be lights that are on the building themselves and not any kind of site light or something
Correct.
like that. Which
Correct, yeah.
would get a different review.
That's correct.
And Mr. Chair, to Mr. Lee, the Planning and Zoning Commission is usually the authority that sees the parking lot lighting and any safety or security lighting in association with a project. And typically what we've done is any type of parking lot lighting or street lighting, the maximum height, including the luminaire, is 16 feet. The concept being that as you raise the height of the standard, the more spill and more unintended lighting you get. And we also, as part of our outdoor lighting requirements, do specify that all lighting has to be fully shielded. So it points down and not out and up.
Great,
Is
thank
there a
you.
requirement for LED, Joe?
No, ma'am. We are in the process of updating for LEDs. So when we get new applications for like signage, we actually send them individually to Randy Burkett Lighting Design. And oftentimes it's not an issue of the choice of light source, everybody's using it. It's just the temperature range. And I'm certainly not an expert on this, but I guess the inclination is to overlight even with LEDs.
To that point, Joe, regarding signage, I don't see anything in there specific to sign. I know we have other sign regulations. Does the Architectural Review Board or do the architectural components of the town center plan impact? Is it different specifically within town center?
Yes, it is. In fact, the city council just authorized a major overhaul to our sign regulations based upon a U.S. Supreme Court decision that was handed down in 2015. Our sign regulations, for the most part, are a little more relaxed based upon the concept of, obviously, the First Amendment, freedom of speech. But the city council also, on the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission, pushed more sign reviews to the Architectural Review Board.
And Michael, I guess question I would have of you also are there any issues with P&Z in dealing with the Architectural Review Board component of this?
No, I think
Okay.
we've tied this together pretty well. With the signage, what we would look at on ARB would be what it actually looks like, not what it says.
Okay.
There's a lot of court case behind this, and we want to not get into that issue from a legal standpoint. What the ARB would look at is, does the sign fit the building? You know, and if it doesn't, then we make a suggestion and see where it goes.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have one question. And before I ask it, I just want to say I'm the council liaison to the Architectural Review Board, and I've been extremely impressed with the committee and how detailed they are when they review a project. And I know one of the things that have come up is the color of the foundation structure, foundation walls. And so I wasn't sure if it was actually stated in this document. I know we've discussed that several times. I thought in one location I may have seen it, but then I thought on page 33 under wall materials, I didn't really see anything about coloring the foundation.
We kind of look at that on a kind of a case-by-case basis. One of the things that, you know, if you've got 6 or 8 inches of concrete foundation, we're not going to require that to be painted. But if you've got the grade drops off in the back and all of a sudden you've got, you know, 7, 8 feet of concrete wall that is viewable from the street, that a lot of times we will require them to paint that.
Thank you.
Sorry, is it painting, Terry, or tinting the concrete?
It's actually painting. Tinting the concrete, that would get very expensive.
Joe, I have a question about the process. The document that we have in front of us, it's with the revised recommendations from the Architectural Review Board. Have they been approved, or would we need to improve them to be incorporated in the town center plan?
The Architectural Review Board adopted them, but they have not been formally presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council, waiting on the Town Center Update team.
So it would be our charge to go ahead, having reviewed them, and if we do approve, if we do so. Okay. Any more questions or comments on it? Do we require, are there any other issues regarding the architectural review that we need to address, Joe?
And I would defer to Mr. Hoffman, but from the department's perspective, we went through every line of the architectural guidelines over that year-plus period of time. And as Ms. McCutcheon mentioned, the review board does an excellent job of interpreting it. And so I would say, as Mr. Hoffman did, if there's not a glaring error or mistake, I would feel pretty comfortable with what we've got.
Great, thank you.
I'd like to make a comment. Deborah, one of the things that's in the standards on, I guess, walls, configurations, those foundation walls shall be exposed a maximum of 12 inches above grade. And that, yeah, that's where I said we're not going to require them to paint it because it's going to be covered up with grass or shrubs or something. But if it's above that, that's when we say, well, now we'll make you paint it. If you're going to expose it more than 12 inches, you have to paint it.
Okay, yeah, I thought I read that somewhere, but then on under walls materials on page 33, I didn't feel like it really clarified that. That's the reason I asked that, because I also know it's been a point of discussion. So thank you for the information.
Okay, it's in the fourth column, second paragraph down.
Okay, thank you.
Michael Lee.
Thanks, Deborah. I think the way that we wrote this on purpose this way, because paint may not be the only solution. If we have to bring siding down or brick or finish down to within 12 inches of the grade, that might be the right solution. So, Terry, you can correct me if I'm mistaken, but I think the idea was to give them some design guidance and tell them to, come up with something that looked nice, as opposed to, having an issue where we might have a 6-foot painted concrete wall. That may not fly in the specifics of the building itself.
Correct.
Okay. Well, if there's no further discussion, would someone like to make a motion to adopt these?
I have a question.
Stephen, go ahead.
In the discussion I just heard, it sounds like the Architectural Review Board does have a little bit of flexibility, a little bit leeway to make some decisions. Is that leeway in the document?
Terry, would you like to address that?
Yeah, it's in here somewhere, like Joseph was saying, about architectural merit.
Looks like under elements, the very last sentence under elements of page 32. Or the third paragraph.
There's also the last paragraph under statement of intent.
Yeah,
okay.
that's what I was looking at.
So I think we have throughout the document the ability of the Architectural Review Board to be flexible.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Lindsay, did you have a question?
No, Vince, I was just going to make a motion to approve.
Okay. To approve. A motion's been made. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Was that? Oh, Deborah. Okay. All right. Would you like to call a roll call vote, Terry?
Yes. Member Curtis?
Aye.
Member Roten?
Aye.
Member Lutz,
Yes.
Member Weiss,
Yes.
Member Risdale,
Yes.
Member Marion,
Yes.
Member Broyle,
Yes.
Member Hood,
Yes.
Chair Loyal,
Yes.
Member Lee,
Yes.
Member Hoffman,
Ooh, let me think. Yes.
Councilmember Liaison McCutcheon.
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you. Terry, thank you very much to you and your team for the work you did to help us make this very easy for us. So good job. Next, we will move on to discussion of reprioritizing the street project matrix. Let me just find it. Joe, can you review with us the items that have been completed, please?
Certainly, sir. Mr. Chair and members of the team, as was mentioned, a little over a year ago, this was the first major component of the town center plan that the team tackled, so to speak, and that was the street network map. And we spent a great deal of time presenting to you the concept of the street network map and how it was developed by Andres Dewani, how it had been reviewed by an engineering firm of a local nature, and ultimately kind of memorialized in terms of how right-of-ways would be dedicated, and within those right-of-ways, what types of streets would be constructed. We concluded our discussion by creating a matrix, so to speak, of streets in town center, those that exist or those that were planned. And that's the table that has been provided to you on several occasions, which I'm holding in front of my camera. At the conclusion of the effort, we prioritized them with the assistance of an idea from Mr. Roughton, and we created a point system. We talked about different things associated with it, and we ended up with the top 7. Those would be the streets in town center that the Department of Planning, the Department of Public Works, and the Planning and Zoning Commission would recommend for funding, future funding to City Council. As we noted, 2 of those have been completed. State Route 109, the 2 new roundabouts plus pedestrian facilities, including a tunnel, has been completed and open for access. And Taylor Road Extension has been completed by the development entity at Villages at Brightleaf and actually been accepted by the City of Wildwood for public maintenance. The feeling of the team was that they no longer need to be part of the top 7, that they could either actually drop down or be eliminated from the matrix and new priorities be assessed. And so tonight, that is what the department is recommending. First and foremost, that State Route 109 and Taylor Road Extension be removed from the top 7 list of priorities, and consideration be given to adding 2 new ones. And the department would also, based upon past discussions, recommend that the Generations Drive become a higher priority, given what we know now from Ms. Broyles and others who have spoken to the issue of having the community college, Meadows of Wildwood residential community, and the YMCA serving off one single intersection at Route 109. So first and foremost, I think we can readjust the list of 7. And I think we can move 2 new projects up onto the list. And then finally, I think Generations Drive deserves a higher priority ranking. Thank you.
Lindsay.
A quick question, Joe. Is there work going on Etherton Road right now? And to what extent does that capture the nature of the improvements required on Etherton?
There is not. The only work that's been completed has been driven by the development of the two subdivisions, Canberry and Main Street Crossing. There was a desire initially to add a pedestrian facility from those two new subdivisions down or south to Manchester Road. We engaged an engineering firm, Cochrane Engineering, to come up with a plan, but with concerns about funding and other priorities, it's kind of on hold right now. It is a priority project. Don't let me confuse the team, but the traffic, the volume of traffic and levels of services aren't necessarily high enough to basically make it number one. It's more of a pedestrian issue.
So out of all of the improvements on the road, would you characterize that one as primarily pedestrian? Are there others that you would characterize as primarily pedestrian as well?
That's a very thoughtful question, and probably I would speak to Taylor Road as being that. If you've driven that segment of Taylor Road between Route 100 and Manchester Road, you'll know that there's sidewalks, large sidewalks, but there's no bicycle lanes. So bicyclists are in the drive lanes, the single drive lanes. And so I see that more as a safety project than, let's say, a volume project for traffic purposes.
Hey, Joe.
Yes, sir.
On Generations Drive, I guess depending upon which way it goes with the proposed new addition of the apartment complex, would there theoretically be two different answers to the problem, and how would we address that?
Thank you for the question. And so from the department's perspective, when it makes a recommendation that Generations Drive should rank higher on the list of at least the 7 priorities, it's not based upon the if-come of the apartment complex. It's based upon several factors that some are new and that you may not know as team members, and others that have been existing. So let me tell you those factors. R.L. Jones Properties, which owns Wildwood Square, is in the process of adding 2 new buildings, allowable buildings, to the center. Those 2 new buildings will constitute about 12,000 square feet of additional leasable space. So that's going to add some additional traffic. The YMCA completed a rezoning of their property, and they have a modest plan to enlarge their facility. Memberships continue to grow there, and so they are generating more traffic, needing more space. And then finally, the community college still has a plan for phase 2. And phase 2 does include an access from their property out to Manchester Road. But at the end of the day, the primary access to the community college will always be Generations Drive to New College Avenue to Route 109. So there's 3 factors in place already, notwithstanding the multiple family project, that justify, I think, consideration of Generations Drive being elevated in the ranking. Thank you.
Joe.
Yes, ma'am.
Elizabeth?
I have a couple of questions. Curious about West Avenue. What is proposed for that particular road?
Well, West Avenue will eventually just dead end or be a cul-de-sac into the final properties that are at its southern terminus now. It is not intended to be a through street to Westridge Oaks. It can't be, there's no stub street. But West Avenue, at least in terms of its current design, probably needs some improvements. First and foremost, I think there's some stormwater management issues that need to be addressed in association with it. And also, I think we didn't do a very good job of creating a bike-friendly environment.
And if I have the right place, that's where it cuts across, or it stops at 109. And
Right.
then,
Right by the feed store.
yeah, by the feed store. That's it. Okay. And it was my understanding, I believe a conversation with you, Joe, at one time about what initiated an extension to Generations Drive was the expansion of another building on the community college. Is that still in play? Was that written when the community college was built?
Yes, ma'am. There is a signed agreement between the community college, this junior college district of St. Louis, and the city of Wildwood that no phase 2 will be occupiable unless they provide an access to Manchester Road. The issue is more so, does it become a public street, or is it just a drive aisle design similar to what they have in place now? So as I say, regardless of that potential secondary access, Generations Drive, New College Avenue in this area, there needs to be an immediate relief, not one dependent on a phase 2 building for the community college.
How does Wildwood orchestrate that? I mean, if it's in writing, how can you push the college? Because my understanding is that road, that ground is theirs, not Wildwood's.
Correct. And obviously there's all types of mechanisms out there to achieve a dedication of right-of-way, the worst being eminent domain or condemnation. But the problem the community college faces, like a lot of higher learning institutions, is that their sources of revenue from state and local taxes continue to be cut. And to offset that, tuition continues to rise. And so the community college has been very frank with the city that as much as they need a second building, there's just no funding available. The community college had counted on that increase in gas tax and cigarette tax that had been before the voters on a couple of occasions to actually fund toward education, and both were defeated. And so they're kind of in a tough situation right now.
I have no clue as to how they operate financially, but I've been told by people that there's a couple of the community colleges that their enrollment has fallen. And that is the city, I forgot this, Forest Park. And then north.
Florissant Valley.
Yes, Florissant Valley. However, the enrollment at Wildwood, I'm told, and in Kirkwood is rising, and they're very full, busting at the seams, I've heard. And they're adding another program, which is a nursing program. And I think as of last January, when I asked some questions about how are they scheduling, they told me that in order to accommodate all the classes, they have to do some ingenuity in how they're scheduling those classes and the number of hours that students are on campus attending those classes, so that they have more classrooms available. So I'm not sure how that works in the scheme of what we're talking about, but it's a reality for the community college, it seems.
Joe, to clarify things, even if the community college went ahead with their addition, and even if they extended the road to Manchester Road, we still need to do something else. Isn't that correct?
That's my opinion, sir, because anything that goes through the community college campus is not going to be a straight line between 2 points. It's going to be a circuitous route, and it's going to be a longer route. And most people probably won't access it as often as they should. That's why I believe Generations Drive and New College Avenue are still priorities.
So to put it another way, even if we would assume in this case that the community college would not allow the extension, and that work would still need to be done, regardless of whatever future developments go in there, just to accommodate current traffic or the addition that's going to happen to the retail.
I think so. The design never anticipated the success of that area, quite frankly. And part of the reason is, and this is no slight against Meadows of Wildwood, originally when the planning for the two roadways, New College Avenue and Generations Drive, was underway, that was to be a range of services, meaning independent, assisted, and skilled care. And so the calculations for traffic out of that development were very minimal. And then it ended up, due to a number of reasons, one, the default of the original developer, the Great Recession, ended up being a retirement community, 55 and older, but most everybody still drives and they all have 2 cars or more. So part of it was the planning phase, but I truly believe that Generations Drive and New College Avenue is going to be a choke point for the future, and that's why I think they are priorities.
I'd like to also mention that Turkey Track Road, which is at the southern end of the property behind the YMCA, at the southern end. I just happened to be visiting a person in their villa, which overlooks Turkey Track. And I also noticed before I went into the home, there was a Carroll House truck. It was half the size of a semi-trailer truck. So I said, oh, somebody's getting some new furniture. Happened to be out on their screened-in porch. And here comes the truck down Turkey Track. And I thought, I'm going to watch and see if they actually do turn left, or excuse me, turn right, south on 109. And they didn't. They turned right, which is they're not supposed to do that at all. And I think what we find is that some of the students, because a lot of people, I'm not witnessing that every day, but some of the people that live backed up to Turkey Track, there's a lot of students that exit that way, and they also exit to the north, which is against the law, traffic-wise. So I think there's an issue there too with that road. It's a narrow road right now. Not that I think it has to be the priority, because Generations Drive and New College Avenue, we talked about this 6 or 8 months ago about changing the timing on the lights at that intersection, but that doesn't seem to be the answer. Making 2 left-hand turns doesn't seem to be the answer as well. It's just a lot more thought.
I think what has become evident is that there's a number of issues, and Reed's rationale for elevating Generations Drive on the priority list, without getting into the specifics of why, I think that, in fact, we previously discussed the validity of doing that without actually trying to support that decision this evening. But
oh,
so
certainly
maybe we could move on to adjusting it otherwise.
I just know that some people are not aware of
I'm sorry, go ahead.
how congested it is when we're not in COVID-19.
So I do have one comment, is that New College Avenue is a separate line item on this spreadsheet. So, as we look at moving Generations Drive up, is it really more of a combined initiative for New College Avenue and Generations Drive, since New College Avenue is the one that actually connects to 109?
I think that is correct.
I would agree with that as well.
So, as we look at this, New College Avenue is all the way down at the bottom, and Generations Drive is
Right.
number 6 currently, but obviously 2 things have been completed. So is it more of an item of combining New College Avenue and Generations Drive to address the access problems to 109 and moving them up to the top, not top maybe, but up the list?
I guess I would ask Joe, does the department have suggested reprioritizing?
I still believe Center Avenue is the #1 need right now. if you've driven Center Avenue, you'll recognize it immediately. I like to think that, as Miss Marion has suggested, Generations Avenue, excuse me, and New College Avenue could move up to 2 and 3.
I think they should be put
Can I make
together.
a
I think you want a combined solution for both.
And I concur.
I agree.
Okay.
I recommend,
Maybe what we'll do is talk about, instead of voting on each individual street relocation, come up with a suggested priority list that we can always discuss if someone wants to jog it in some way. I would also suggest that the 2 completed projects be removed from the list. I think they create, as long as they're done, they confusion. Dan?
yeah, I would just recommend, like Joe said, that we make, and to support Lindsay's input, that we move those to 2 and 3.
Do we need a motion to remove State Route 109 and Taylor?
Before we do that, Joe, can you clarify, is all of the work complete on those, or is there any ancillary work remaining?
Thank you for the question. In terms of State Route 109, we've made vast improvements from Clayton Road south now to Main Street for all intents and purposes. There's still some work to be done, I think, at Manchester Road and Route 109. And so I would prefer it not to be removed, but just move down further in the priority list, because as you know, it's a signalized intersection now with a number of roundabouts to the north. It's an intersection that at times has poor service levels. So I would like to keep at least that Route 109 on the list just for that sole reason. And the same would hold true for Taylor Road Extension. Ms. McCutcheon can attest to this much better than I, but the timing of the signals and how that intersection at Taylor Road and Route 100 function is not what we had hoped. We've worked with MoDOT, the State Department of Transportation, but I think it should stay on the list just so it isn't forgotten that that intersection needs improvement already.
I concur.
Okay, what would you do with Etherton Road? Where would it go underneath New Generations and College Avenue? I
think so, sir. Again, for the benefit of those that live in that area, Main Street Crossing, Canberry, and to a certain degree now, Townsend Windrush, Wildwood Trails, and Old Grover Estates, I think a pedestrian improvement and a wider roadway to accommodate it. It's striping. It's not even striped in the middle, is still a priority.
So would that become number 3 or 4? Are we combining New College and Generations?
I don't think they should be combined. I think they need to be close together and maybe have the same period of time as we look at them, because they both have individual issues. There's a light there, and then it's just hopefully having a second exit for Generations Drive. Entrance and exit.
Okay, so Etherton Road will become number 4. And then where do you think we should slide in the completion of 109 and Taylor Road Extension, Joe?
I would move them down to, for all intents and purposes, 11 and 12, along with Taylor Road.
Okay. So then are we comfortable with West Avenue becoming, well, it would stay number 5 actually, wouldn't it?
I would actually suggest to the team that Main Street move up to number 5.
Okay.
And when I say Main Street, it's not the section that's been constructed here in the downtown district or the section that now has been constructed as part of Main Street Crossing. I think we all recognize that we're missing a tooth in the front of our smile, and we probably need to fix that tooth, and that's Main Street.
That is true.
I would agree with that. So West Avenue would be number 6.
So do we want to have the department put together kind of a revised version of this for approval?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if there's not objection amongst the team, we'll continue to talk through them all, but we'll send you a revised matrix before our next meeting so you can kind of see how it all fits together.
And I think, Joe, or at least I would appreciate your guys' best shot at it. And it gives us a point to start and to sign off on.
It would be our pleasure, and we've gotten a lot of good input, and I expect some more before we conclude.
Very good. Are there the two streets you had asked us to consider adding to that, what were those?
Again, I think New College needs to move up from.
Okay. Oh, I thought you were adding two streets. Okay, never mind.
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. Any additional? Yeah, Michael. Michael.
Then Taylor Road improvements would probably move up as well.
It may well be. The Department of Public Works has applied for grant funding to address the issue that I described, the narrowness of the two lanes and the lack of bicycle facilities. And also, all in all, the median, there's some things that could be done. So we'll take a look at that as well. And I'll consult with our Director of Public Works, Rick Brown. But for now, like I say, I think it should stay on. Where it ends up, I will defer to him and then let the team give me the thereafter.
My only thought on Taylor Road is something that we could probably tackle and accomplish based on budget versus some of these others, which are kind of a long shot.
Is it possible to assign like a $1 sign, $2 sign, $3 sign to each?
We sure can.
Like hotel.com for roads.
And I want to be able to go on the Wildwood site.
Well, nobody will be surprised when they hear the number then.
And watch the numbers spin.
Any additional discussion before Joe and the department develop our list for our next meeting regarding the street priorities? Great. Thank you for the input.
Yes, thank you very much. And we'll get something back to you, hopefully reflective of tonight's conversation. So thank you for your input.
Certainly. The next item is any general discussion by the team about this evening's activities, right? Really, any of the information that's been provided to date. Anybody have anything?
I can hardly wait until Manchester Road's finished. I know it's going to be gorgeous. I can hardly wait.
Really, I agree.
Ms. Hood, thank you for your patience. You're a saint.
Here's the thing. You have never seen women unload 18-wheelers 3 at a time in the middle of Manchester. We are getting a workout. Trust me. It's all good. It's all good. It'll be beautiful when it's done.
Yes.
I can't wait to have little benches. I was just gonna say, I can't wait till we get little benches and pretty flowers, and we all get to walk up and down the beautiful street when it's completed.
I think I'd like to adjust the agenda just for to hold off on the last chance for public comments, if there are any, and move the discussion regarding the workplace district designation located in Ward 5 that Deborah had asked to be placed on the agenda for our next item. Is that all right? So Deborah, you have the floor.
Okay, so if you look at the town center regulating plan map, the workplace it backs right up to the Villages of Brightleaf, which is the neighborhood general. And I would like to see, based on citizen input, that the workplace be changed to neighborhood general, and that the maximum building height be 3 stories. I went down and looked at the conditional uses and the permitted uses, And I don't see anything that would be in conflict if we change that to workplace.
Kathy, could you pull that up on the screen?
This,
Old-fashioned way. Deborah, it's that triangle-shaped piece is what you're talking about?
yeah, it kind of looks orange on
Yes.
here. Oh, you can't see me, but yeah, if somebody can use the pointer on there.
And
Oh,
what
there
were
it is.
you saying about that, Deb? I'm sorry.
To make that consistent with the
Neighborhood
neighborhood
Central.
general that's in Villages of Brightleaf.
Yeah.
Because on across the street, you have the neighborhood edge.
Mhm.
And instead of having that a workplace designation, I mean, you could still have an apartment building in there with stores or commercial underneath the living spaces. But I think it would be more consistent if we change that to neighborhood general.
Can I ask a question? If, as that being workplace, does that allow, and this is a hypothetical question, that a gas station could go in there?
Joe?
Yes, ma'am.
So hypothetically, somebody comes in, goes, I'm going to open a gas station there. I'm kind of leaning a little toward Deb. I mean, it doesn't bother me one way or another, but I understand Deb's comment and why she would want it changed to neighborhood general. So that's my comment. I'd like to hear what other people have to say.
I know, I think I know, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but St. Luke's owns that property. And so under, if we change that to neighborhood general, they would still be able to put a medical facility in there, I think as a conditional use permit. Is that correct, Joe?
Yes, ma'am, under the proposed permitted uses chart.
So Deborah, is there a particular use that the residents are not looking to accommodate on that site?
I think more commercial type development, like Ms. Hood just brought up, gas station. I think they just would prefer something more consistent with housing.
Could someone, get another question for Joe. So again, hypothetically, if someone wanted to put in little coffee shops, little retail stores, I'm sitting here visual thinking I would hate to see one more gas station there at 100 and 109. And visually, that's what I'm thinking someone might do. So again, I'm kind of leaning that if there was a way it could be zoned, again, with someone getting certain permits, that's not offensive to the view of that. I agree with Debbie.
And I think, part of, we have the pedestrian bridges, so that gives access to the other side of 109 where you have the coffee shops and you have the grocery store and you have you have Walgreens and those kinds of things. So really the necessity for that to occur on that corner, it just doesn't exist.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, please, Joe.
The neighborhood general, as presented by the team after its discussion of the permitted activities, does allow a range of commercial activities, but they're all conditional versus permitted. What's that mean? It means that they would go under a greater level of scrutiny versus if the property was to be retained as workplace district. So the coffee shop, retail, certain financial institutions potentially, and as Ms. McCutcheon mentioned, both professional and general offices, including medical and dental, are all conditional activities that could be considered on that corner.
As could be additional housing.
Yes, the apartment complex, quite frankly, could be an option there under the neighborhood general district.
Would the apartment complex be acceptable under the workplace?
I believe under our new thing, no.
Okay, so we are potentially setting up a situation where multifamily housing could have an interest in that site if we change it. I guess
Certainly could.
Michael, does P&Z have any thoughts on this?
As far as the zoning goes, I think that the reason it's workplace is because of the owner of the
Okay.
property. That's the history behind it. I would
Well,
say,
the other three corners are workplace.
yeah,
too,
and
if you
I would
look at
say
it.
that when you create a conditional use permit, you make the entitlement much more difficult to obtain. And as Wildwood, we are not an easy entitlement to obtain. So I think you just devalued the property significantly if we do that.
If we send it to neighborhood general?
Yes.
Okay.
And
May
if
I
I
ask
could,
how many acres are involved in that triangle?
it's over 10 acres, Miss Broyles.
So, Michael, if I don't quite understand how you devalue that property because St. Luke's owns that, and if we made it neighborhood general, they could still go ahead and put a medical facility in that area.
With a conditional use permit. So it would have to come through planning and zoning and council, whereas if it's straight line zoning, they would just work with Joe. We would get the town center criteria through architectural review board and the criteria, but it's not a board approval. It'd be staff working with them, most likely.
Should they wish to sell that property, would it sell for less?
Miss Marion, I don't know. That's a good question, and one probably St. Luke's Hospitals needs to ask. I will advise you all as team members, I did contact the real estate representative for the hospital to advise them that we might be talking about it tonight. So I think, not knowing what the discussion would be, we'll probably get some input back from the property owner here before we need to make a decision. And just so you're aware, this was a legacy zoning from St. Louis County. The property zone C8 plan commercial district. St. Luke's had looked at doing a medical office and what is now described as, I think, a treatment center, meaning that the stay of patients could not be greater than 23 hours or more than 24 hours. They've never been able to find the right formula, it appears, because it has been vacant for now 25 years. But certainly, we now know what the residents in Ward 5, as detailed by Ms. McCutcheon, would like to see. We can pass that on to St. Luke's Hospitals and see what they think.
So does it come back next time, Joe?
If that's acceptable to the team and you, Ms. McCutcheon, I think that would be great. We could have something from St. Luke's stipulating what they think.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think what we would end up doing is moving it from commercial and more into residential, which would fit the neighborhood. So the idea is a good idea. It's but your commercial activity is going to not happen basically with the environment that we're in today.
And also I have a question regarding the topography. If I recall correct, where would access be? Would it actually be off of Etherton Road, or would there be, is it, because it's pretty steep if I recall.
Yes, they cannot access either Route 100 or Route 109. So their sole access will be off of Etherton Road, now Taylor Road Extension, as we're calling it.
Okay. So I think we will solicit and wait for input from the property owner. And why don't we make this, if it's okay with you, Deborah, we'll make this an agenda item for our next meeting.
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you
very much. Can we go, Kathy, can we go back to our regular screen? Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't know, are there any public comments anywhere that we're aware of, Kathy or Terry?
Unless Tony's changed their mind and doesn't want to just observe and wants to speak, or other attendee, but neither have indicated that they want to speak. So I think we're okay.
Are there any other comments from members of the team or the staff?
Mr. Chair, I just have one. As you know, we reached a milestone tonight at this meeting. We completed the 5 major components of the town center plan. So our next meeting, besides having the discussion about the St. Luke's Hospital site in Ward 5 and the updated street matrix, we'll have a summary of what we've accomplished over the past year plus of time, and hopefully then move on to the discussion about a draft document for review and public input.
That sounds great. Thanks so much to the team for all their hard work and the department. That's how we got here.
Hey, Vince,
Yes, Dan.
thank you for all your leadership. We got a lot done tonight. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
I'm looking forward to the chance. We'll have a chance to actually see each other again. Hopefully that will be, although it's looking a little crazy right now. I don't know.
All good.
Well, our next
I
meeting
like-
is scheduled for, go ahead. Jeannie, did
Oh,
you
I
have
just have
something?
I just like sitting out on my deck and doing this. Nice and relaxing. I'm
Okay, well, maybe
spoiled.
we'll have you can have a choice.
So Joe, do
Schedule
we
the meeting again on
know-
August 11th? What, Elizabeth?
I was just going to ask Joe, I know it depends on the spiking of COVID and those kind of conditions, but does Wildwood City, do they know when they can open up for these types of meetings in person?
Well, per Mr. Lee and the Mayor Bolin, we're going to try a live meeting on Monday night at the Planning and Zoning Commission. I think we'll have Zoom as an option because there's still restrictions on gathering size and social distancing which would make some of our meetings almost impossible to conduct. But no, we don't have, as of last night, we had 16 council members, 5 of which chose not to be in attendance and do it Zoom. So there's still some apprehension out there, and we're not going to rush it unless told otherwise.
I'd also have
Michael
add,
Lee.
Yeah.
What?
I
What'd
was
you
gonna
say,
add that we've had great success doing virtual public input. We
Yeah.
did that for the Village Green, that's 6 acres, and we had more responses than we ever get in person. So as we get to that point, I think that can be a great conversation amongst the team on how you want to handle it. But especially now when people are at home.
I think whichever process will allow, I think our society is becoming more virtual, and it may well be that we have both options henceforth for a lot of the city meetings.
If we put everybody in the room, it's just up on the front there. We're limited to the people that can actually be in the room with us. So it's going to be mostly virtual anyway, I think.
And just to give you context, when we've had live public input sessions, the most we ever had was on Community Park, 125 people attended. When we did a virtual public input session for the Village Green, we had 400 people participate.
Wow.
So
that's
And we had great participation in person for what's now the Green Pines Park.
Yep.
But it was not that large, but we also had a large number of residents who participated in the naming of the park, and that was virtual.
Yes, I think it was over 300 or so.
Wow, that's fabulous.
So we can make both work, I think.
Great.
Vince, can you repeat the date of the next meeting?
According to the agenda, it's Tuesday, August 11th,
Okay.
6:30 p.m. So if there's nothing else, I would make a motion to adjourn or seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Deborah, and a second by,
I second.
okay, thank you, Jeannie.
Or whomever.
All in favor? Aye. Please have a safe, healthy month. Stephen?
Pardon me?
Oh, I didn't know if you had something else to say.
No.
Thank you
Have
all
a good
again.
month, everyone.
I have a
Be
comment
safe.
to Joe after the meeting, though.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you so much to the members of the Wildwood Planning staff. Thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Joe,
We need to vote, don't we, Joe?
For adjourning?
I think we're okay.
Uh, Aye.
aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
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 Bye.
Good night.
Good night, all. Thank you.